I just like being in Nashville. I mean, Nashville, I always say, is like New Orleans if it fucked a banjo.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raylan Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too. I'm Raylan Nelson.
I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raylan Nelson Band.
Welcome back to another episode of Music is Funny. Hey, before we get started, I'm going to be on the Rushmore podcast this week. It comes out Friday.
Love the Rushmore podcast. Pepper and Thomas. They do good stuff.
Yeah, we're going to be doing funny women. Oh, that sounded weird. We're not doing funny women. We are talking about funny women.
So why are you on there?
Because I'm a funny
Anyway.
woman. Oh, and also, if you like these videos, you should join our Patreon for just $3 a month. You can get it unedited, and you get everything a week early. So you might...
We've also got a 420 live stream coming out April 20th. You can find all that stuff on our website. If you're not doing anything, join us on that.
And we're going to be in Woodstock, Georgia, May 13th and 14th.
And May 28th
Yep.
in Memphis.
That's
so
correct.
If you're around those parts, come see us play live.
So today we have a really cool guy. He's a younger comic, and I see him everywhere on YouTube.
Yeah, he was one of our favorites in the van driving around the past couple of years. We discovered him out there, and a hilarious guy.
Yeah, he's been on Conan. He's been on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, we talked to him about going on Joe Rogan's podcast and how you prepare differently for that than you do on TV shows. Had a very interesting upbringing as a child. We get into that. He's hilarious.
Yeah, and if you don't know anything about him, you should give him a goog.
Give him a goog.
Without further ado, Mark Norland. Okay, JB.
Mark,
Hey,
man.
JB.
Thanks for doing it.
Hey. Yeah, thanks for having me. Nice digs.
We're at the Papa Willie and Friends Museum and Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee.
Cool. Yeah. Who was the first guest?
Doug Stanhope.
Oh,
Not
hey,
bad.
you really went down a peg, huh?
No, and actually we talked to you about him, and he said
him about you.
That's what I meant. And he said you were great. He loves
Wow.
Yeah, we were asking about
That's amazing.
up and coming comics. One of the names he brought up was yours. So there you go.
Wow, I'm a huge fan, so that means the world. He's a hero. One of the best.
He's one of my favorite. Absolutely.
And Sam.
Oh yeah.
And Sam Morrell or Morrell. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's a killer, friend of mine.
Yeah, he. I caught a couple of your episodes on YouTube, the drinking ones, and I just sit there and drink with you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Also, we noticed last night that when we laugh when you're talking, then it cuts you out. So if you see us go, ha ha ha, that's why we're doing that. We noticed.
All right, I'll take it. Thanks for the heads up, because I would have been scared.
Well, again, thanks for joining us. So let's just start off with asking you, what kind of music do you like?
Oh man, I'm a big dweeb. I like a good dad rock. I like Motown. I like a lot of singer-songwriter nonsense. But then I get weird too. I'll take some Talking Heads, if you will, and some Cranberries, and then I'll take a little hippity hop. So I'm all over the road.
You grew up in New Orleans, right?
Oh yeah, born and raised. A lot of music there.
I was about to say you were surrounded by that. And you had a kind of we've heard you on many podcasts, a pretty interesting upbringing.
Yes, super weird.
Maybe lay that out a little bit.
Oh, sure. Well, born in Treme, which is kind of a rough and tumble, like poor black neighborhood. And my dad bought a mansion that was falling apart. So he decided, I'm going to fix this up. It was like a midlife crisis. And we were the white family living in the neighborhood with a mansion. So everybody thought we were loaded. So we got robbed constantly. And so then they had to work a ton to pay for the building and fixing it up. So they hired a nanny who happened to be a large black man who was a transvestite who did burlesque at night. So his name was Enos, and he was like he taught me everything. He brought me up. He was taught me how to shave and put the seat down, how to take a girl out, how to fist fight, all that stuff. So I'm learning these male role model lessons from a guy in a wig and high heels.
I love New Orleans. I broke my neck in New Orleans when I was in my 20s.
What?
Yeah, well, it was after about, college age, 14 hours of drinking, and tried to dive into the Mississippi River and hit some stairs. Yeah. Well,
damn.
It was a trip.
Wow. Wait, how old are you?
I am 52, I think.
What?
Yeah.
You look great.
Clean living, baby. Clean living.
Black don't crack, man. You look amazing. Oh, all right. But no, you're holding in there. You look, I thought you were 38.
Hey, there you go.
That's not bad. On Zoom, you look 38.
I'm 37.
37. Yeah, I'm 36. I'll be 37 this year.
Wow, you look great too. I thought you were, 20, 26.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say that.
And John Wayne looks, John Wayne. Sorry, Willie Nelson looks great too over there.
Yeah.
John Wayne looks like shit.
Papa Willie.
Yeah.
So yeah, growing up, did your housekeeper hip you to music as a child at all? Did you get any of that?
Not really. It's a good question. I mean, he would play this is the 90s. So he'd put a Walkman on and he'd be sweeping up while dancing and cutting a rug. But I guess he never really broke out the records. But yeah, I grew up with MTV and just record stores and all that stuff. So I was a big fan, and jazz was always playing in the house. My dad loved classical and a lot of Zydeco. So yeah, music was all around.
Do you know the Preservation Hall?
Yeah, of course. That was a hot spot.
They play the band there, the Preservation Jazz
Preservation Hall.
Thank you. They played Farm Aid the year that we got to play, and we met the Ben, the tuba player.
Yeah,
he's got big, a fro. He's a white man with a fro.
Uh-huh.
Are we allowed to say fro? Edit that out just in case. He was a white man.
You're fine.
Are we canceled? So he actually
fro-yo. Right. Sorry. That's our version. If it's a white guy, if a fro on a white guy, it's called a fro-yo.
Fro-yo. That makes it safe to say. So he told us about the clarinet player who it was 87 or 88.
He was probably
80
80 something at the time.
Yeah, he was in his 80s. So he told us that that I still use it to this day. Do you smoke weed, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
So he told us this trick. If you go, when you're traveling around, you can go to Walgreens and you can get the eyedroppers. They're two for a couple of bucks. And you just take the rubber part off of it and use it as a one hitter. And you can toss it before you get on the plane or whatever. Isn't that? And I use it to this day. You're supposed to be smoking out of glass anyway. It's better for your lungs.
Yeah. And this was coming from a dude that was doing it in the 70s in New York. So we said, when the fuzz comes up, you just take it and smash it on the ground and the evidence is gone. Plus, you don't have to spend 20
Wow. I love it. That's genius. Boy, yeah. Nobody is more creative and handy and crafty than a drug addict.
That's a good point.
Break it up. Oh, there you are. Okay, we're back.
So I'm always interested in how one starts. Like, when you were a kid, did you want to be a comedian? I mean, I'm sure you wanted to make people laugh, but did you see, like, at a young age, could you look up and go, oh, there's a comedian, that's kind of what I want to do? Or was that later? Because I know playing in bands, it's easy to do. You see Kiss, you're like, I want to go play, I want to do that. And there's sort of a path. But as a young comic, I can't see how you can you can't try out your set at the party to impress the girls or anything. How does that work?
Right. It's a good question. Yeah, I guess my self-esteem was so low. You'd see these comedians, you'd see Steve Martin or Seinfeld or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, I love this so much. This is great. I loved stand-up. I loved comedy. I loved SNL and Animal House and Caddyshack and all that stuff. But I was like, oh, I could never do it. I just like it. And then my life became so shitty and boozy and alcoholic and failing out of college that it gave me the strength to go try it because I had zero going on. So I had nothing to lose. So that's what got me to try stand-up.
And you started in New Orleans or Louisiana? Is that where you...
I went to college in Baton Rouge, which is about an hour away. Right. And then I would drive to New Orleans to do open mics and all that. And then eventually I fell in love with it. And I just dropped out of college and moved to New York.
And
so why New York and not Los Angeles?
Good question.
Well, let's be honest. I wanted to be a good comic.
Well, when you got to New York, I'm sure it's an eye opener coming from, probably big fish, small pond, and then hitting New York where you're just, there's ball breakers everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, it was terrifying. I mean, first of all, I got mugged 3 times in a year. I got bed bugs. My landlord died of AIDS. I mean, just having no money. I was hungry all the time. Just a nightmare. Plus you're bombing. I bombed for years until I finally started to figure it out and get my head right, and finally started taking off. I mean, I was a janitor. I was a furniture mover. I was a construction worker. It was a nightmare. I don't think I could do it again knowing what I went through, but I'm glad I did it.
What kept you going? If you kept bombing, what kept you going?
I had literally nothing else going on. So it's kind of like, well, this is life now. It's kind of like seeing a mom with a crying baby on a plane. You're like, that looks like hell. Why wouldn't you just kill the kid? Why wouldn't you just throw it in a dumpster or something? But you're like, this is what life is. I just thought this was what you do. So I just kept going, and it got better slowly. And now I'm, doing great, and I've never been happier.
So was the goal just to do stand up, or is it one of those things? I don't really know, as a musician, it used to be anyway. Oh, start with there, go get a record deal, blah, 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 do that. Was there a certain path, or you were just like, maybe try to get on TV or any of that thought process, or was it just, I'm going to do stand up?
It was just, if I can get paid to tell jokes on stage, I'll be happy. I didn't need to be famous or Ray Romano or anything like that. I knew that was probably never going to happen. I just thought, look, I've had so many shitty jobs. I'm lifting a couch up some stairs right now. If I could just get paid to talk into a microphone, I've made it. That, to me, that was success. And I got there. And then you kind of start going, well, what else could I do? And then you're like, let me get on TV. Let me get an hour special. Let me sell a sitcom. And then you just try to keep going from there. So it's good to have a goal. But once you get that goal, you need another one, because otherwise, we get bored.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's examples of comics that get to that certain point and just stay in their hometown and like, fuck it, I got this made. Why bother? I can do this.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that either. I know plenty of guys or gals who do that, and praise Allah, God bless you, whatever it is. But, sometimes you want to see how far you can go.
Do you ever adjust your material depending on the crowd? Like if old people or young people or...
I get that question a lot. I never do. I write my act and I go, this is my act. I feel like it's like Quentin Tarantino. He's not going to show a different Pulp Fiction to LA and a different one to Cleveland. This is my Pulp Fiction. This is what you're getting. And I try to, what's the word?
Massage.
Curate. Yeah. Manipulate. I don't know. I try to make my act accessible to all people. Black, white, fat, dumb, gay, smart. I try to make it funny across the board, which is challenging. The only way I alter it is if some college guy says, you got to be clean tonight. No cursing, no anal, no nothing. So I go, okay. But other than that, I do it for the money. Yeah. Because, and it's a little bit of an exercise. Like, let me see if I can still be funny while not talking about jizz.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally get that. You've done, the late night talk shows, all of, plenty of that stuff. Now, I know it was a big bump for you probably by getting on that. But when we first discovered you was on Rogan's podcast,
Yeah.
Which has kind of become like the Tonight Show,
Yeah.
I would think, for like, I can't imagine a bigger mouthpiece for that. And I know that probably came after you doing TV. So,
What were you more nervous for Rogan or the TV?
What's the prep like for each
or
of them?
was the adrenaline stronger for Rogan or TV?
Well, I did my first late night set in 2013. So at the time I was like, this is it. This is everything. This is my whole life. And then it came out, nothing changed. I did another one. I've done 9 Conans, 4 Tonight Shows, a Colbert, a Corden. Nobody gave a fuck. But I learned that over the years. Like I was like, maybe this one will pop. Maybe this one will break me. But nobody cared. And then once I got Rogan last year, whenever that was, 2 years ago, I was like, I think this is actually the thing. So I did prepare, and I was nervous for all of it. I'm a nervous guy. I was nervous for this. So yeah, I was freaking out for the first Conan or Tonight Show, and I was freaking out for the first Rogan. And I prepared like crazy and wrote a bunch of stories down the night before and really prepped.
I bet that was much harder than the Tonight Show stuff. Cause you know, you got 3 minutes or whatever that you just nail it down. And then you're going on there and like, well, it's gotta be, I don't want to look like an idiot, but I want to have some stories, but we're going to be flying by the seat of our pants. So I got to be ready.
Exactly.
Kind of for anything.
It's way harder. And you want to get your stories out. You want to be funny. You want to be charming. You want to be likable, but it's almost like a fist fight. He's taking you over here. He's taking you over here. So you have to stay within his conversation, but also not be boring and just go his route. You got to bring it back to you sometimes. So it's an art form in itself, that kind of conversation podcast thing, because you want people to get to know you, but you also want to be natural. So it was a weird give and take, but it went well, and I got a lot out of it. I got a lot of exposure. I started selling out right after that at comedy clubs.
Nice. I see you everywhere. You're everywhere on YouTube.
Really?
Yes. And I don't, it seems like you'll just you're just everywhere on people's podcasts, popping up on my.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks. That's news to me. I'm trying to stay relevant in this pandemic. I'm freaking out because I can't get out there as much. So thank you. That's nice to hear. You
are working your ass off and it shows. And
that's also something that's interesting about you being of a different generation than say like Doug Stanhope, who's done it for a while, got to a point. And if you're in it long enough, the industry changes and everything crumbles and you have to sort of reinvent yourself. You're sort of on the rise at the point where, like you said, you weren't really used to like, well, fuck, I'm on the Tonight Show. I've got it made, because that wasn't quite working like it used to back in the day. But you also weren't clouded by that or jaded by that to go, well, fuck, there's social media, there's the internet, there's Instagram.
Yeah.
And as a person where you've been able, and maybe easier than some of the older guys, to just pivot and go, I got to be funny somewhere. How do I do it without, not looking like an asshole?
Yeah, I mean, trust me, years ago, I laid up at night going, what the fuck is Snapchat? Do I have to get on this? I just want to write jokes. I thought I was going to be a comedian. Now I got to be an internet entrepreneur, influencer, whatever the hell. And you just got to face it. I mean, it's like some guy made a living making horse and buggies or VCRs. And sure, he can bitch all day about the DVD player, but you got to get on board. I mean, there's a bunch of truckers right now going, automated my ass, I'll be fine. But they're going away the dodo. So like, we can bitch all day, but it's coming. So you got to adjust and adapt or you disappear.
Yeah, it's the same way with music. Once Spotify or Napster or whatever came around, it's basically like, well, you're not going to make a dime selling music anymore.
Yeah.
Not a dime.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people that up to that point, they could rely on record sales, tour a little bit, but they're making money off records. And almost overnight, it's like, well, if you're going to make any money, you got to go out and play and sell fucking t-shirts. The music will get people there, but you're selling something different. It's still the same stuff. You're still writing songs to attract people to the show, but now you're not selling the songs, you're selling the t-shirts.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. And thank God people still enjoy live shit, because that's how I make my money. And I don't know what I'd do without it. But yeah, everything is now a commercial. Like Bill Burr said, a special used to be your HBO special, was this huge thing. Now your special is just a commercial for your touring. So they go, I like this guy on Netflix. He's in town. Let's buy tickets. And that's basically what it is now.
So that brings me to ask you, when you do a special and you put it out, and then you have to go tour, are you quickly coming up with new jokes, or because you can't really tour on the special stuff, the stuff you put on the special. So how quickly are you writing jokes after that?
You gotta get on your ass. Like I put that thing out. I put out a special in May. And when I put that out, I already had about 20 new minutes under my belt that was working. So then when I hit the road, I had to really bring that up to 30 minutes and then do crowd work for 20 other minutes just to fill 50 minutes. So it's a struggle. And you gotta keep pumping it out. I don't know how these old timers do it, where they do the same set for 20 years. Because I heard that if you do a set in a town and they like you and they come back next year and you do the same set, they'll still laugh, but they won't buy a ticket again next year.
Yeah. And that's a little different with music, because we could go play.
Yeah, exactly opposite. You just, actually, as a matter of fact, most people don't want to hear your new shit. You show up. I don't want to hear nothing new. I want to hear the old stuff I like, So and we're
jealous.
Well, we're jealous of you guys for, I've always
said. You don't have to bring shit with you.
Yeah, it's just a microphone and you get to go out.
That's true.
terrifying to be up there by yourself, because if we're bombing, we can just play louder or make noise, and there's 2 or 3 people on the ship going down with you. But you guys, when it bombs, well, let's talk about this. When you bomb, there's the way bands do it. You either try to pick the other guy up, or it's like, we're all drunk. Let's just take it. Let's just
call them out,
blow it up, Yeah. So when you feel yourself bombing, do you try and reel it in and then go, well, this is not going to work, so I'm just going to lean into the bomb, or trying to crack up the opening comedian or just the staff or whoever might be hip to comedy,
Yeah, that's definitely what you do. You lean in, because at first it's scary. You're like, oh, you're sweating. You're kind of freaking out. You're frazzled. And then after a while, you're like, fuck it. I know I'm funny. I know these jokes work. You guys suck. And then you just start going in on them, or just making fun of their dumb town or the guy in the front row. So yeah, after a while, I used to get like, oh God, they don't like me, and just kind of crumble. And now I just turn in on them because I've been doing this long enough. But I always wonder, excuse me, a little semen, with musicians, how the hell do you know if you're bombing or killing? Like I watch a ton of music documentaries, which I love, and they're like, this crowd sucked. We couldn't. I'm like, what's the difference? They're clapping either way.
Well, Nashville crowds are different than anywhere else, because Nashville crowd will just sit there like this and stare at you.
Because everybody is a musician in Nashville.
Oh, right,
so right. Half of the crowd is like, I'd be doing something different. They're dressed weird. Why are they up there and not me, kind of thing.
Or it's it's your closest friends who are also doing music, and you were just at their show last night cheering for them. That's kind of how it is in Nashville. But when you go anywhere else,
I think it would be kind of like what you were talking about, how if you were a comic and went back and did your same set the second time and there's polite clapping, you can feel the energy that's coming from the crowd. So no matter, even we've played shows where we've done like acoustic things for older people, and you get done and they're in a seated environment. We're used to being a loud rock band, and you get done and they clap politely, and then they get very quiet. It's very uncomfortable. However, they're loving it. That's just how they roll, So
old school.
Yeah, it's probably like you guys. It's just one of those things you can feel.
And,
And
okay.
What about live stream shows? Have you been doing any live stream comedy shows? Because we hate them.
I did a few, and they're soul crushing. They're a bummer. I just did it because I was so rusty. I had to get back into it any way I could, and oof. It's like phone sex, it's penetration versus what are you wearing? It's not the same. So I'd rather go outside in the snow and do a show for 8 people on a picnic table than do the Zoom.
That's like we talked about. It's like practicing, but you can't fuck up, and it's going to be on the permanent record because it's recorded.
Yeah, that too. It's a nightmare. Yeah, there's no connection. Even if you see people staring at you, they feel they might as well be mannequins.
Yeah. And like we were just saying, you can't feel the energy of the crowd at all. You don't even see them. So.
I got something weird to ask you. Like, as far as I've watched a bunch of podcasts where if there's more, maybe just even 2, but if there's more than 2 comedians on a call, how frustrating is the lag in Zoom? Because comics are quick. They're so quick. And when you take out that element out of, and then you got 3 or 4 people trying to get in, and everybody just lands at the same time, it's got to drive you nuts, because it drives me nuts.
It's a nightmare. All we have is timing and delivery, and you can have a brilliant joke, but if the wording and the timing is off, that joke is over. And each joke we rely on so much. So if one of them falls, it's almost like a dominoes thing, and it's a killer. It's a nightmare. So I hate Zoom.
Yeah, but thank God
for comedy
at this point.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. That you got to accept that.
We're taking advantage of it because you guys are stuck in and can't go anywhere. So we're trying to abuse that situation and get as many comics that we can on here. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, I was just in Nashville for Zanies. I don't know, in October, November.
Next time you come, you're gonna have to come in and do this in person.
Yeah,
I would love to.
What do you think about Zanies?
To date. I love it. I love Nashville. I love the vibe. I love the people. I love the club. It feels like a solid comedy club. Like that's what a comedy club should feel like. Just kind of bare bones and almost mom and poppy. So yeah, I'm a fan. I love Lucy and the whole gang. I just like being in Nashville. I mean, Nashville, I always say, is like New Orleans if it fucked a banjo. Like it's just it's kind of wild and boozy, but it's also got that twang that we don't have. So I love it.
Yeah, but we don't have the voodoo that you guys have. So there's that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We have black people.
And we can't walk down the street with alcohol.
Oh yeah, that's a bummer. You guys should have that. They should allow that there. Come on.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. So when you went to New York, like who was the class above you? Because I was a huge Tough Crowd fan with, Norton and Patrice and all those guys for those 2 years, some of the greatest TV of all time. So I guess they were still working around there when you showed up. Were you?
Oh yeah. I mean, Patrice died in 2011. I got there in 2008. So I watched all those guys. I watched it. I still see Dave Attell. It was Jim Norton. It was Colin Quinn. It was Nick DiPaolo. It was Keith Robinson. And it was a blast. And Todd Barry and all these guys who I watched from YouTube in New Orleans were just in front of me. And it was so cool. And that's the beauty of being a comic. I don't know about music, but I've worked with Jerry Seinfeld, the biggest, you can't get any bigger than that. And I've worked with him and I'm nobody. Like if a barroom guitarist, he's probably not going to open for Mick Jagger.
Right.
But in comedy world, it's a little more connected that way because there's so many musicians, there's millions and millions of musicians, but I feel like there's thousands of comics maybe. So you can find a nobody on the street and be like, I like this person, come open for me. Whereas I don't know if a young musician could have that.
Well, I think maybe that is that you guys have a little more control over who gets to open or who you get to take along. A lot of bands are, they got managers or a label. And what happens is, well, this, the manager has another band that he manages like, no, we need to get you onto this. Like, how soon did you get into the business aspect? I know you went to New York, but when was it time to I got to find a manager. I'm going to try this. Or did you even consider that kind of stuff?
I actually I'm still bad with the business stuff, but I opened for Amy Schumer, started opening for Amy Schumer. She just plucked me out and saw me somewhere. And that just catapulted me because she taught me about the business and managers and agents. And I didn't know anything. I was an open micer and, I did a club and I opened for somebody and he was like, I'm going to introduce you to my manager. And now I have a manager and it just slowly started building. And then I got an agent and then you get some road dates and it all starts kind of coming to fruition, but it was a slow build. I'll tell you that.
What do you think about going back and listening to Lenny Bruce? Do you think it's still funny?
No, I don't think so. I think he was more, I think he was ballsy and he pushed the envelope and he was important more than he was funny.
Yeah, we have this conversation all the time because, again, maybe the difference between one of the difference between music and comedy is
we can go back and listen to old music and it's
like when we
fabulous.
listen to Hank Williams, it sounds different than it sounds now, but it still sounds killer. You listen to the Ramones, it sounds different than what people are doing now, but it still sounds killer. And with comedy, there's not a whole lot of people, unless they're looking back to rip them off, it seems like not a whole lot of people going back and just maybe until recently, like before, because you guys are always burning material and moving on to new things. But I guess with the internet, there's probably a way for a whole new generation to go back and discover that. But I mean, how far back can you go before you lose the funny?
It's a great point. It rarely holds up. It's this kind of comedy's like a plant where it's beautiful for a little while and then it just starts to wither away and then it's nothing. And then a new plant pops up. And so it's very flimsy and goes quick, but there's a couple of guys like old Cosby, old Woody Allen, who are both problematic now, but like Groucho Marx, there's a couple evergreen guys that are still like Woody Allen's old stuff still holds up. It's still great jokes, but like Lenny Bruce was almost, he was a fabrication of the 60s. Like he was so that time or the 50s or whatever that was. And he said cocksucker and all this stuff. And I think it was like a generational thing. Whereas like Woody Allen is just good jokes.
Yeah. So do you think about that when you're writing jokes or do you ever think people 50 years from now, if they're listening to this, are they going to still find it funny? Or do you just, whatever's funny to you, you just write it? It seems like stories would have more longevity than jokes about the times, even though jokes about the times are probably gonna get you more exposure, maybe, you know?
Probably, yeah. It's a quick hit. Whereas I like jokes about people and relationships and drinking, and I try to go evergreen myself, but they take longer to sink in than you're right. Jokes about the times, those really pop because they're so now and they're so fresh, but I don't think they last. So I'd rather a slow build and delayed gratification.
What advice do you have to up and coming comics?
Ooh, so many things. I would say be weird now, try shit, record it, listen to it. Because everything in your head as a comic, we're so insecure. So we're scared we just want to kill. We want to get laughed. We want to get noticed. So just try weird shit when you're anonymous, because when people are watching you, you can't really get outside the box as much. And, go with your gut. Go with your gut if you think something's funny, and know you suck. Every comic thinks they're great, or they wouldn't become a comic. Even though they're bombing all day long, they still think, I'm great. But know that you're not great and work on it and go, I'm not that good at impressions, or I'm not that good at act outs, or I'm not that good at one-liners. So focus on that instead of focusing on what you're good at. Try to do the things you're bad at and go outside the box a little. I kill in this room. Well, then go to the room you bomb in and then try to kill there. Do a lot of that. There's not a lot of internalizing with comics. They just go, they didn't like me. Fuck them. So I think no, they didn't like me. Why? Let's work on that. I think a lot of comics need that.
Yeah.
And there's no rush. We're in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
So when you started, are you like most musicians who you have a favorite artist or favorite type of music, and you're basically just parroting almost who your favorites are, or sounding a whole lot like your favorites? Did you have a couple of guys like that you had to like look in the mirror and go, shit, I got to stop with that cadence or that, this, that, or the other. I'm just becoming whoever.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was a huge Norm Macdonald fan.
Oh, I love
so
him.
I just ripped him off early on. Then I was doing a lot of Seinfeld. Like, did you ever notice? And what's the deal with this? And then I did a lot of Chris Rock was huge for me. The early Chris Rock stuff. Huge. I love the way his brain worked. And then George Carlin was like the number one comic in my mind. Like, this is the guy you want to be like. He's silly. He's poignant. He's social commentary. He's got it all. So, that was big. But do musicians have that? I heard that Tom Petty and Bruce Springsteen were just doing Dylan in the beginning.
I think every musician has that. They grow up and you're not even trying to do it. Growing up, when we first started playing, I mean, there was Kiss and AC/DC and all that. One of the first bands, it was this old punk rock band called The Replacements. And everybody in Nashville for 3 years, everybody in Nashville wanted to sound and be like The Replacements. Number one, because they were crazy and they got to do stuff nobody else did. And they told people to fuck off that nobody else would think of doing. So there was that aspect, but it was, and then you listen to your recorded output and go, wow, I'm a very horrible version of The Replacements. Then you sort of find yourself within that. But, I would think with a comic, you really get that one time to change your shit and then become who you are. Because a musician, quite frankly, we could reinvent ourselves. Maybe people will buy it, maybe won't, but there's been plenty of rock dudes that have put out a country album, or country people that put out rock, blah, blah, blah. As a comic, you can't go from dick jokes to like social commentary without, or I don't know anybody that's really made that jump. Do you know of any comics maybe that started as completely one thing and then flipped it to something else?
Yeah. Like, I know Jim Gaffigan was very political when he started, and then he became this clean food guy. And then this guy, Greg Giraldo, was clean. Bill Burr was super clean.
Giraldo was
Billy
clean?
Burr. But Giraldo was clean. And then he went he became himself. He was like, all right, I like drugs and booze and women, and I'm just going to talk about that. And so I think that happens a lot in comedy, because you want to be perceived a certain way, but then you realize, I just got to be myself. I'm not that guy.
I guess it just comes with age. And there's probably did you ever run into, I know we talked to Doug about it, but he's from a class before you. Did you run into any people basically trying to change what you do, or get with a producer, maybe like picking a producer for your first comedy special, things like that? The first time out, you got a lot of people telling you what, how you should do it, maybe what you should look like and all that kind of stuff. Did you deal with any of that, or were you past that?
No, everybody deals with that. I mean, when you're new, you're so malleable that, and you're so clueless that people, if somebody tells you anything, you're like, maybe I do need to change that. Oh, he knows his stuff. He's older than me, or she's a producer, or she's my agent. They know the business better than I do. But at the end of the day, you're going to be you anyway. So just go with you. I got told I was doing too much dark stuff. People were like, nobody wants to hear the dark stuff. You got abortion jokes. You got jokes about death. Nobody wants to hear that racial stuff. And I'm like, oh, maybe they don't. And people are coming out for a night out. They got a baby. They don't want to hear about funerals. I'm like, oh, okay. But fuck that. Funerals have funny stuff too. Like race, there was a lot of racial humor. There's a lot of this, a lot of that. Like abortion jokes are funny. So I sat with that for a while and I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think my favorite comedy is when you make serious stuff funny, you know?
Yes, that's what it's all about.
Stuff you're not supposed to laugh at and you can't help but laugh at.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when you're at a funeral and you're so sad, your buddy nudges you and farts, you're like, I needed that.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think I've ever been to a funeral that there hasn't been laughter at some point during the thing.
Right.
I come from a family of smartasses, so there's always something funny to talk about.
Yeah, just comedy is healing, you know? Music is healing too, but comedy is healing. It helps you get through the shitty parts of life.
I hear. I agree. That's why it's so weird when people try to shut down comedy, because I'm like, you think you're this hero, but people need this. Like during the pandemic, I mean, crowds were coming out to the like snowy winter shows because they're like, it's a pandemic. There's race protests. There's police this. There's Trump that. Like, I need a yuck.
Yeah, something silly.
Yeah.
You know?
Here.
Okay, so who are your favorite, or do you have any favorite up-and-coming comedians?
Oh, well, there's a couple guys who and gals who are just not getting the respect they deserve, I think, because there's all kinds of shit on Netflix that sucks. But I think people have like, you know, they gotta fill a quota or they gotta do a favor or whatever it is. So I think a lot of the funnier people aren't getting noticed, even though they should be. You know, I feel like does that happen in music?
Yeah.
I think what happens.
Oh, okay.
It's this weird thing where, you know, there's all kinds of opportunities for musicians and comics, you know, avenues to put stuff out. You got social media, you can, you know, different ways, but there's so much of it. Like, is it harder to get a Netflix special than it was maybe to get a Comedy Central special now? Or is it just kind of a different thing? Because there's no curator in the middle, which is probably a good thing. But I think a large chunk of America or the world needs somebody to sift through and feed them stuff, you know?
Yes, exactly. And that's why thank God for the internet. Thank God for YouTube and social media, because we shit on social media, but that's one good aspect of it is people can get discovered. You can put out your own shit, and these gatekeepers who are clueless, enough with you. What the hell do you know?
Yeah. Well, most labels don't even want anything to do with you unless you have 15,000, 20,000 followers already. Or
when you get to that point, you don't need a fucking label. So it makes no sense. It's like people think are anxious to sign or do something, you know, young people. I want to sign with this manager, or sign with this agency or whatever. And it's like, if you're to the point where they want to sign you, you're probably doing all right by yourself, and maybe just do the numbers and go, well, if I carve off another 15%, am I going to double that? You know, a lot of times it doesn't make any sense. You're just lazy, or it seems cool to have people. Yeah,
exactly. My buddy, he's a up and coming comedian. He's doing great, and he just fired his manager. And he's like, "Why am I giving them 10%?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. Why are we? We have the same manager." And I think managers are getting a little spooked, if I can be honest. I think they're kind of starting to realize, like, what the hell do? We got this huge skyscraper with our name on it, but once they figure out they don't need us, we're fucked.
The jig is that, well, it's like, you know, when you used to make CDs, you'd have to go find a printing company and a CD. Blah, blah. Now people do it on their laptops, you know, and it just runs, and it goes back to what you're saying. It's a shame for the printing companies and stuff, but time to pivot, move along, you know. And now everybody has a Patreon, and then not only that, your super fans are gonna follow you on there, and you can have a relationship, you know, with a little bit of boundary there, but it's a whole social media platform just for your super fans. So why do you need the agent? They're going to give you money monthly.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Go right to the source. My OnlyFans is killing it.
So shitty
There you
gigs
go.
we've all had. Or I wanted
yeah.
to ask you about before that. How do you tell we talked about Zanies and we have our favorite clubs. What makes a great room for comedy? Because for us, and there's a lot about the vibe, but a good PA is a big deal for musicians, being able to hear yourself, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes the PA is not great, but the rooms, I mean, we love the dive bars. Like what makes a good comedy? Is the PA important, or is it really literally just the ownership and the hang and that kind of thing?
For a comedy room, it's got to be tight, intimate, dark, and just well insulated. It's almost like a womb where all that exists are the laughs and the jokes, and the staff's got to give a shit. The owner's got to give a shit. They have to have good taste. Like a lot of people will book, Pauly Shore or something where you're like, you don't care about comedy. Like you gotta curate a good audience over years. There's a club in Denver. It's just been there for 40 years, and they book well, and the audience is trained well. Like, you don't talk here. This is a real show, and they know it. And when you go there as a comic, you can feel it. Like, oh, these people get it. They realize they respect comedy. Other places are like, make us laugh, homo, like all this shit. And you're like, who let this guy in? Throw him out. You paid me to do a show, and he's yelling at me. Like, but they're like, well, he's buying wings, and you're not, so he's staying. You're like, all right, you don't get it. But there's a lot of that. So a good show is just a place that gives a shit, and the room has got to be set right.
Yeah. Have you ever I guess you say play a show as a comedian. Have you ever played a show without an audience at all? Nobody there?
No, they would cancel that. I've done one person, I've done two people, but if there was no one there, they wouldn't do it.
They wouldn't make you to get up there and do it. Yeah. Okay.
Nah, because it's all about laughter, and if you can't get a laugh, there's not really a point.
Well, that's the difference between musicians and comedians, because they just make us play.
Yeah.
Nobody was there.
Really?
Well, if you got a guarantee, we've walked at some point, but we were talking with Doug last night. Apparently Doug has played for nobody, but it was in a overflow of a bingo room in a casino. It was comedy. And if it got too crowded, they would go in there and people would walk by, but nobody was there, but they made him stand up there and say shit in case they could draw people in. So he said he literally
that's hilarious.
Did a gig for nobody. We did one.
But that doesn't work, because people think comedy is just this thing you can put in a room. Like, I get hired for weddings and all this stuff. I'm like, weddings? I'm up here talking about Puerto Ricans for half an hour. Like, what are you, crazy? You got to hire me for the best day of your life or whatever? Like, you're an idiot. Comedy, they just think like, oh, we'll put this human in a room. He'll make noises and we'll all laugh. But that's not how it works, Like music, it kind of can be atmospheric and play, and people can feel it and talk. But comedy is this weird, it's almost interactive. It's like a conversation. So you can't do it without the right setting. But I've done so many gigs at corporations and roasts and all this stuff. People hire you for dinner parties, and we'll have a comic. And then you go in there and they're horrified.
Yeah. So have you done, there's a thing going on now with not house parties, but house shows. And it's people, generally moneyed people, that will go play, and there'll be 40 or 50 people there, and we'll get paid well. But it's sort of a stripped down acoustic thing.
Yeah.
Jokes and, kiss the babies and sign a few things. Is there a thing like that in comedy at all?
Oh yeah. And it's always horrible, but yeah, at least like you say, the money's good. So you suck it up, and you're counting the minutes. You're like, all right, they want me on stage for 45 minutes. I'm 42 minutes in. Here we go. 41 minutes to go. 40 minutes to go. 28 minutes to go. And then you just get that paycheck and get the hell out of there. Maybe get a couple of drinks.
Yeah. Have you ever done a gig where you've had to stretch? Like, we've done gigs that maybe we didn't have enough material for 3 hours that they wanted us to play.
That's because we can't keep a drummer. So then
that's true.
Those drummers, they're addicts.
But how do can you stretch as a comic? Because we can just play an extra lead here or there, or take a little extra time tuning, crack a few jokes in between.
Not really. I mean, you could just start doing crowd work and go, oh, that's a weird lampshade. How about that chandelier? Huh? Who brought the cat? So it's not the same, because a comic has like a set act, and it's this long or that long. And if you want me to stretch, it's going to get pretty bad.
Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting about comics is when you I guess I knew it in a certain level, but there was a thing on HBO that was, I think it was Chris Rock and Louis C.K. and Seinfeld. It was a round table, which is fascinating. But listening to Louis C.K. talk, up to that point, I was like, oh, he's not just bumbling and muttering and just funny by nature, like literally down to the mumble craftsman, especially the four on that. I think Ricky Gervais might've been the fourth one, but watching those guys, those are like old craftsmen that like into comedy. And I guess that's like, I would imagine you go with that, and people's favorite comics are the craftsmen, that appreciate at school and know how to, put themselves into that kind of model.
Yes, completely. You want to sit there and watch, whereas sometimes there's people like coming and going in a ballroom or something, and they're like, "Who's this? What do you say about Uber?" But you're like, "Hey, douche, you got to sit there and listen to the setup to get the punchline." You're not just gonna magically start laughing. It's very frustrating, and it happens all the time. But hey, they pay.
Yeah, it's like writing about comedy. They'll lay out a punchline that sounds horrible, and you miss all of the setup before that. It's like that old time, writing about music, or I guess writing about comedy is like dancing about architecture.
Oh yeah.
It's silly. It doesn't make any sense,
Yeah, it'd be like hiring a prostitute and then having a prostitute stay on stage, and people walk in the ballroom and they're like, "Why am I not orgasming?" You're like, "Well, you got to be with her for a minute and penetrate and lick stuff." Like, it's not just going to happen. And it's frustrating. Comedy, there's a setup, but it takes a minute.
How sick are you of the term cancel culture? You hear everything, and I know it's a real thing, but I think guys like you have figured out that most people don't agree with the loudest people on the internet. There's a lot of people.
I hope you're right.
I really think that like everybody I talk to, nobody agrees or gets offended about the things that they're supposed to. Well, maybe not everybody, but most people.
Yeah.
I think the vast majority of people want to hear good shit talking and want to laugh, and they don't get their feelings hurt as easily as people think they should,
Yeah, I completely agree. And I hope you're right. I think there's a lot of people, it's kind of in a weird way, cowardly and oddly conservative. Like, I'll do a college gig, and these kids are like, "Hey, you can't say that." I'm like, "What are you, the dad from Footloose? What's going on here? I thought you guys were young and fun and liberal and having a good time." But no, you're like, "Hey, buddy." And you're like, you want to defund the police? You act like cops. You can't say this. You can't do this. You can't think this. Like, it's very ironic. So I think it's young people, like, trying to stand for something and pretend to matter. Like, if you really cared, go help people. I'm telling zingers up here for peanuts. Like, you think coming at me or my tweets is going to solve the world? Like, go help somebody if you really give a shit, but you don't. And it's just quick and easy. And they get a little jolt of hero and activism or whatever it is. And look, nothing wrong being an activist. Great. There's a lot of problems out there, but go to those. This guy, this ain't the problem. I'm just an insecure dweeb trying to get a chuckle.
And it's a good point, because I've thought the same thing. I'm old enough to remember the PMRC on. You'd go see an Ozzy show, and there'd be religious zealots out there with their signs, that Ozzy should say. And it's like their children rebelled against that and grew up to just take another side and act exactly the same way. And they hate their parents for their conservatism. But they're way more closed-minded than the parents were. The parents maybe didn't want you to go see Ozzy, but they didn't give a fuck if you did, really. They just went about their business, I guess I should say. I don't like them. I'm moving on. But now it's like you plant your flag, and you're going to look like an idiot in 10 years anyway.
Exactly. And you'll notice it's rarely like people who are actually struggling don't give a shit because they got problems they got to deal with. They're trying to pay the bills and feed their kids and, stay safe or whatever. It's a very privileged thing to be like, "Hey, that fat joke was problematic." You're like, what are you talking about? Like, we got school shootings. We got Flint doesn't have clean water. Like, women are trying to get this and paid the same and be treated this. Like, this is your issue, this fat joke, you fucking loser. And it usually, you can tell it stems from something internal. They're like, "I'm fighting this fight because of so-and-so." It's not actually the fat joke. It's something within them.
Yeah. And it's, if you either are for free speech or you're not, you can't pick and choose.
Right.
You either got to be all. Anyway, I'm a little extreme about it, but short of saying something illegal, you gotta let it all go, and you gotta let idiots talk if they're running stupid theories or whatever. Then the majority of the people, let them talk. Don't shut them up. Let them talk. They're just going to expose how stupid they are. If you're an ignorant racist, let him go.
Right. Yeah. Let him go. And all my black friends are like, I'd rather know that he's a racist. I'd rather get it out there. I don't want him hiding in the bushes, pretending to be for me, but yet he's doing this shit on the side. But no, I completely agree. Like flat earthers. I love flat earthers. I love that there's these idiots out there who actually think that, and they're allowed to think that. We shouldn't lock them up. They're just retarded. So let them live. That's their right.
Yeah. And then
sorry if you're a flat earther.
With I am actually. No, I'm not. And it seems like with
she's a space denier.
With cancel culture, it seems like they're also canceling people that are on their side. It's
that's scary.
Most of I've been a victim of that. It's like, hey, I'm on your side. Why are you coming at me? And
then, hey, folks, they're gonna come for you at some point. So like,
karma is a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Whose side are you on, and what are you really fighting for?
I honestly think it would help a lot of that. You've mentioned shitty jobs. I've had shitty jobs forever coming up when you're in your 20s trying to make music. If you have a shitty job and I worked in a warehouse for 15 years, black dudes, Hispanics, all gay dudes, all in one thing. And you're united together against the boss and the fucking guy we're working for. And we all busted each other's balls constantly about your people and your preference. And I mean, whatever the stereotype about the white guy, the black guy, the Mexican guy, the lesbian, we all went for it, and we all cracked up. And I don't think anybody out of that group, there's probably some people that learned a bit, maybe a redneck worked with a Mexican, like, these guys are cool. I like them. If you have to, it's important to be around people, and nothing rallies people more than a shitty job.
I agree. And shit talking and busting balls in a way. I just watched the Patrice O'Neal documentary, and he trashes women for most of his career. And then they show his daughter. Well, I didn't even know he had a daughter. And she's like,
until I saw the movie.
Yeah. She's like, he made fun of my giant forehead, and it made me feel better, and it gave me confidence about my forehead. And I mean, you think back to like gym class when you had the special needs kid. Nobody fucked with that kid because it was real. So you're kind of like, okay, they fuck with me. They make fun of me. They bust my balls. So that means they kind of respect me. They don't respect this other kid because they're actually worried about him.
Yeah.
So like, I'd rather get my balls busted than not, because that actually means there's a problem.
That you're
you see
retarded.
What I'm saying? Does that make sense?
It means you're retarded.
Yeah, exactly. So if you actually get made fun of, you're actually doing better.
Yeah.
And nobody busted balls like Patrice. Good God.
No, God, he was scary. I met him a few times and kept my distance because I was so new. I was too green. I couldn't handle it.
Did you ever make the walk by that legendary table at the cellar and have them pick you out? And
no, I wasn't that stupid. I saw them and I admired from a distance and stayed over there.
Yeah, I often wondered if people, probably not to them, but I can imagine to like Bert Kreischer and maybe Tom Segura, like people come off the street and just, hey, Bert, you're fat, and start busting balls like you're one of the guys. I wonder, does that happen? Like normal people trying to just jump in like your boys?
All the time. And it's kind of annoying because you're like, I get it. You know who he is, but he doesn't know who you are. So it is kind of weird. Like Dave Chappelle had that funny thing. On his Chappelle show, he had like, I'm Rick James, bitch. That was like one of the bits. So he said he'd be at Disneyland with his kids, and somebody was like, Rick James, bitch. He's like, can you not call me a bitch in front of my kids? I'm just trying to ride the rides,
Right.
Like, I know you know who I am, but I don't know who you are. And you're calling me a bitch and you're a stranger. It's a little weird.
So I also love the differences. It reminds me of the old hip hop world, the New York and the LA comedy scene. And there, granted, nobody's shooting each other or anything, but there's definitely a nice rivalry going through it. And just me from a distance, it does seem like the New York scene, especially as far as busting balls, is way more hardcore than Los Angeles.
Yeah. That I think it's just East Coasty. It's just kind of saltier and grittier and blue collary a little bit. And LA's sunshine and beach and tacos. It's palm trees. I think it's just a cultural thing.
Yeah, the weather alone will make you less, surly out there, I would imagine.
Yeah. And I think this sounds bad, but I think a lot of people move to New York to be a good comic. So you end up having like really well-crafted insults and zings coming at you. Whereas LA, they're like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be a cute, poppy, fun star. So they're not really worried about busting his balls. They're too worried about, getting Botox and getting on TV.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that as far as, I mean, clearly New York's an industry town too, but as far as comedy goes, it seems like there's way more Hollywood, TVs, all that kind of extra stuff, movies out there that New York is a little more of just comedy,
Yeah. Which bites us in the ass. Those LA guys are doing way better. They're way more famous. They're way richer than all of us. So they're doing great in that department. But I don't know. I just like telling jokes, and I just want to be a good comic.
What do you think about, because if I wanted to start a Joan Jett cover band and Joan Jett and the Blackhearts cover band, we could do that.
Yeah.
So what if I wanted to be Mark Normand? So I started dressing like you and did your exact jokes. And I'm a Mark Normand.
But call it a cover
up. Yeah. Wait.
Cover comic?
Yeah, maybe that's better. Cover comic. What do you think of that?
Yeah. That's unprecedented.
Happen. Yeah.
No, I think it's frowned upon because here's the thing. Excuse me.
I'm not doing it for tribute to you either. Kinda, I guess. You're doing like an homage in a way.
It would be insulting, and I think a comic is alone up there, and you cultivate this brand. You're your own business. The Blackhearts and Joan Jett it's an entity. It's a band. So going up, you're like, oh, you could just imitate them. But if you're doing me, you're doing me. You're not really imitating me. You're doing me. So that's no good. You're doing my act. You're stealing my essence.
So I can't do it?
No. I mean, do it at Halloween or send me a video or something, but
not at
don't do it. Don't make a living out of it. Also, Joan Jett's done, right? She's not performing.
Didn't she just do the Super Bowl?
Yeah, she's still playing.
Wow.
I didn't even watch the Super Bowl, and I know that.
I didn't either. Yeah.
I don't think
things are weird now.
Oh, she didn't?
No.
I thought somebody sent me pictures of her playing. Singing? Playing?
What?
Can you look that? No, I'm just kidding. There's nobody over there. I'll
Young Jamie, can you give it a goog?
I'll look it up.
Give it a goog.
I might just be starting rumors. Miley would do it though, right? Miley?
Would what?
Miley was on there?
I don't know. I didn't see that.
Miley Cyrus was on the halftime show. Am I nobody? Okay, moving on.
Nobody cares.
I think it was The Weeknd.
That's what it was. None of them. And I didn't.
He looks like Joan Jett.
He was wearing the strange, he looked like he was wrapped as a mummy.
Oh,
yeah,
fun.
I guess I should just shut up because I didn't even watch the Super Bowl.
I didn't see that either, but I saw a lot of people commenting. That's another one of my favorite things. Once the Super Bowl comes around,
what I just did, where I commented about it,
and everybody shits on the halftime show. It's just like the new. It's bigger than the Super Bowl.
I was like, it was great. Joan Jett was on it, and she wasn't on it.
Like, when's the Super Bowl halftime show ever been legendary? There was Prince. That was pretty badass. But Tom Petty played, but Prince played in the rain and played. So that was cool.
I think Katy Perry's was pretty legendary.
Wow.
Oh, I know one. Janet Jackson's was pretty legendary.
Oh,
good point.
The tit slip.
If you bring titties in, then legend status.
OnlyFans. Okay. So we're getting to our hour mark, which means our hour mark. Mark.
Yeah, Mark Normand.
So I want to ask you about my grandpa. When's the first time you ever heard about Willie Nelson?
Well, I mean, I always heard him on the radio and whatnot. Always around, always just, part of the zeitgeist. And plus, that kind of music is big down south from Louisiana. So always heard. And then I would see him in movies and stuff later. Wasn't he in? I don't want to screw this up. But was he in
Half Baked?
Okay, he wasn't in Blues Brothers.
Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, okay. I jerked off to that. Yeah, okay. Half Baked. All right, so he's been around. He's part of the He's like an icon.
He loved Jessica Simpson. He was in Employee of the Month with her,
Wow.
Which is a terrible movie. But he played, I don't know if it was Employee of the Month. It was some movie where he played her grandpa and she kept calling him grandpa. And I was like, he's my grandpa.
Yeah, right. Back up, bitch.
He loved her. He thought she was beautiful. And anyway.
So what do you got going on coming up? Are you touring?
Oof, I'm all over the place. So check marknormancomedy.com for dates. Trying to get back out there, become a comedian again. And check out me on YouTube. Check out my special. I got some podcasts. I'm gay. Hit me up.
You staying in New York?
Yeah. Let's hope it comes back.
Yeah, I think it will.
Okay.
Less crowded for a while anyway.
Before we let you go, I did have to tell you that you and I actually met before. I don't know if you remember, but you and I were at a Subway. I had a dream that we were at not the Subway, but a Subway restaurant. And because we stop at Subway a lot on the road, and we were in line. In my dream, we're in line getting our sandwiches, and I hear your voice behind me, and I look over at JB and I'm like, Mark Norman's here. Do you hear that? And we both stop, and you're talking, and that's my dream. That was it.
I'll take it.
You and I were at a Subway together. We all three were. This isn't our.
All right.
Just in dream world.
It's fascinating.
Did I give you 6 inches?
Or the foot long?
Foot long. It is kind of. I will say, because I listen to Doug Stanhope's podcast and I watch you more on YouTube and stuff. So as I was sitting here, I almost zoned out, like I was just watching you. And yeah.
I'll take it. I do that a lot to the gals.
If you got if you got an extra couple of minutes, we can get your fortune read by the Willie Nelson fortune teller machine. It's this really horrible,
it looks like
cheesy,
shit.
But we got Doug's.
Please.
So we'll grab the computer and we'll carry you out there. Hold on a second.
I'd be honored.
Hold on.
All right. I can't wait.
Here he is.
That's great.
So let's do that, or you can still see him. Okay.
Jesus. I can see why I didn't like it.
Here we go.
All right. Come on, Big Pop.
You may have heard this, but Willie Nelson's here to tell you that you better believe it. I take it not only one day at a time, but one moment at a time. And keep at that pace. If you can be happy right now, then you'll always be happy, because it's always in the now. But first, give me some more silver coins and I'll give you a fortune.
Always with the grift.
That was great.
I zoned out halfway through that, so I don't know if
I'm worried about you. You zone out a lot.
She smokes a lot of pot.
I smoke a lot of weed.
Well, that'll do it.
Mark, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you. You guys are great. Great to meet you, and rock on.
Next time you're in town.
Yeah, next time you're in Nashville, we'll come do it here in person and catch up.
I would love to. Let's do it. Beer's on me.
Fantastic. We'll be in touch and let you know when this is coming out and send you some stuff.
All right, let's do it. Thanks, Power.
Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
He's hilarious.
I love Mark Norman.
It's very cool that he hung out with us.
Yes, good guy.
Yeah, I hope he enjoys his John Wayne coffee mug that I sent him.
He'll probably forget by then, but hopefully if he rewatches it, he'll figure out why he got that and not a Willie Nelson one.
Yeah, I hope it wasn't. Anyway.
It probably was, but who cares?
Hey, you guys, if you're cool, subscribe, rate, review. You can go to our Patreon for early and unedited shows. We have a 420 live stream.
Shows coming up. We referenced that in the intro. And next week, we have another great, fantastic guest.
Yeah, so come back next week to see Jim Florentine.
Enjoy your groceries.
Free Britney. Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.